Hi, and gee, thanks for stopping by. Before you listen to the story today, I'd like to share a little background with you, and I'll be as brief as possible. But when I first got the notion to record stories for you, well, it was back at the time when COVID hit, and everybody was pretty much confined to their home, and I figured they would probably soon be looking for something new to read or hear or think about. So I decided to share stories with you, and I called our endeavor Mojave Beach Productions. Well, a radio friend, Jack Diamond, he was just tickled to join us as our announcer, and by a marvelous stroke of luck, Jeff East, a professional voiceover actor in Orlando, he came aboard as storyteller. Anyway, I taught screenwriting at the University of Missouri in Kansas City, and one of my former students, Patrick McGranahan, he knew the technical end of what I was endeavoring to do, and Patrick became a producer. Well, our dramas, like King of the Mountain, they were released as a Saratoga Playhouse production. We'd been up and running for just a few months when, I don't want to get morbid here, but Jeff died of COVID pneumonia. Everything, and I do mean everything, just came to a stop. I wasn't a storyteller, certainly, and besides, I just plain lost heart to go on. Now, Mojave Beach Productions, it's still on the internet, and now we just consider it to be like a studio where our original productions are archived. They're available to the public. Just go to the internet and search for Mojave Beach Productions and you'll come right up on it. When I could get the wind back in my sails, I created Sunday stories on YouTube. But now I was very much alone, except for my friend Joseph, who handles technical details, and for which I'm very, very grateful. Anyway, the other day I was trying to think what I could bring you this week. I do try to release a new program every Sunday. And I realized that Jack and Jeff and Patrick, who's gone on to other things, of course, just put so much work and so much heart into what we'd been doing that I don't want them to ever be forgotten. So I went back into our old Mojave Beach production studios, and I found a program that I wrote, and Jeff told, Patrick co-produced, and Jack is heard at the beginning and at the end. I was reminded that I found a singer. She was a singer-songwriter named Erudessa Gentain, and she composed and performed 2 songs in this production that I just have a feeling you're going to absolutely love. Now, fair warning before you watch this. This story opens with a homicide, but it is not a murder mystery. A small-town sheriff is determined to find the person responsible for the death of the couple camping in the hills outside his town. What he hadn't anticipated was that the people in those hills would protect that young man with their life if necessary. And so the role of the hunter and the hunted becomes reversed and blurred. And then the media catches the scent of sensationalism, and it gathers its strength in order to create an icon that they can destroy. This is a story written about compassion and greed and anger and mob mentality and even forgiveness. I have to admit that I was influenced by the O.J. Simpson trial, by what happened to Judy Garland and Marilyn Monroe at the mercy of press and public opinion, until they were created in the image of the media and bore little resemblance to who they really were or had become. I see it now in what's happening with Donald Trump. But I don't want to get into that. No, this isn't going to be a political thing. History will tell the final tale on that one. Anyway, before I go, I do want to tell you that Eddie Craig, also of Orlando, I've never met Eddie, but he sent me an audio tape of him playing a harmonica. And all of a sudden it hit me that it was Eddie and his music that could transport you directly into the North Carolina hills better than any narrative that I could come up with. So I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your comments after you've heard the story. So till then, King of the Mountain, told by Jeff East.
Mojave Beach Productions.
Saratoga Playhouse and Mojave Beach Productions present dramas of conflict and passion, stories taken from ordinary life and those not so ordinary.
On this pitch-black night, deep inside a patch of North Carolina woods, embers are dying from an earlier campfire. There's a small tent close by, the kind created for honeymooners rather than for serious hunters. A lantern glows from inside, silhouetting a man and a woman engaging in a bit of loving horseplay as they prepare for bed. The woods are cricket and frog-hushed, except for the couple's whispers and occasional bursts of laughter. A pair of shoes crunch slowly over dead leaves. Earth sandals. The kind favored by environmentalists and hippies who don't yet know the 60s are over. The shoes have feet in them. They must because they take one step forward and stop. Ankle deep in foliage, like a doe, listening. The campfire hisses. Sparks spiral upward and fall back on themselves. The shoes advance cautiously, then stop again. The silhouettes on the tent wall whack each other playfully with fat pillows. The sound of their laughter filters through the stillness as the silhouettes collapse into one another, becoming a single shadow. The campfire, feeding on itself, flares briefly, and the shoes step over it and move toward the tent as the silhouette splits into two forms again. One of the shadows reaches for the lantern. The light goes out. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps running through leaves, followed by a commotion of human voices, muffled, indistinct, alarmed. There's a struggle. Bodies move quickly, slam into one another, and fall away. Heavy sounds of flesh thumping into flesh. No screams, no well-defined words, just a gurgle of disbelief, the horror of surprise. And it's over. The campfire refuses to die. Two licks of flame dance among the ashes. Then the footsteps walk again, coming toward the fire, determined, unhurried steps. They stop at the campfire. The man in the earth shoes kicks dirt and debris over the stubborn flames until they're reduced to small red dots. It has to be one of the most gruesome faces imaginable. Two black holes for eyes, flaring nostrils, jagged slit of a mouth. A really hideous mask worn by a child participating in his grade school production of My Martian and Me. In fact, at least a dozen of the repulsive buggers are attempting to entice an 8-year-old Sammy Rowland into their aluminum foil spacecraft. In the audience, Sammy's grandparents, Sheriff Buddy Rowland and his wife Christy, watched the boy with unabashed pride. Deputy Ollie Stevens hurries into the dimly lit room, finds the sheriff on an aisle seat, and whispers in his ear. The look on Buddy's face when he tells Christy he'll see her back at the house makes it clear a situation is urgent. As the two men leave the schoolhouse and head toward the county jeep that Ollie was driving, Ollie tells the sheriff how hikers found two bodies out by Lake Lawanda not 15 minutes ago. A man and a woman, young, dressed in night clothes, obviously taken by surprise. Ollie, in jogging shorts and sweats, had been watching bowling on TV when he got the call. He didn't take time to throw on a uniform. He knew that the sheriff would want to be informed right away. Sunday afternoons, most places are pretty lazy and laid back. Sunday afternoons in Linden, North Carolina, are about as lazy and laid back as a community can get without going extinct. The one main street is nearly empty. Country roads are even emptier. Birds and squirrels and deer trying to stay out of a hungry man's way are about all that stirs. The town's 3,208 citizens are out fishing or boating or milling around their own backyard, enjoying the last of summer. Actually, it's mid-September, but the foliage hasn't yet figured that out. It's hanging tough until the first nip of frost. The bodies are gone now. Those people that Buddy had summoned from Ollie's car phone on the way to the murder site are at work backing evidence and taking official photos. The coroner's van is pulling away from the area designated by yellow tape as the crime scene. Long faces on everyone. Concerned, troubled faces. Not that these folks are world illiterate, they aren't. They watch the news like everybody else. They're aware that violence is all around them. Wackos blasting New York and Europe and the Middle East, carjackers, gangs everywhere. But, and this is a crucial part, it had never happened before in Linden. Buddy, who should have retired years ago but refuses to give up the post, goes pale. He fights a violent physical reaction to what he's just seen. Moves away from the others to think, to cope, to try to contain his sudden rage. If you walked up on the scene without knowing what to expect, probably the first thing you'd notice would be the shoes. Earth shoes. There aren't many of those to be found in Linden. Scuffed jeans hang loosely on the young man lying on his back beside the waters of a rushing creek. The camouflage fatigue shirt is a cast-off from an Army surplus store. The fellow wearing that god-awful getup is too young, too innocent appearing for such wretched anguish. He lies with his eyes squeezed shut against some ghastly image, scrubs his face hard with his hands, but he can't wash away the mental picture. He squints into the sky with piercing blue eyes filled with an agony that suddenly takes form. The scream of a wild, trapped animal roars from his throat and is lost to the rumble of the wind in the trees. The word on everyone's tongue now is who. They begin to look at one another suspiciously. Friends, relatives, past lovers and ex-spouses, teachers, shopkeepers, the kid on the corner, everybody is a suspect. Looks a lot like what happened over in Charlotte a while back, Ollie observes, while he and the sheriff follow up on the phone, hoping to find a lead. Buddy lifts a brow, his way of saying, "How's that?" Ollie says, "Man and woman out camping, stabbed and killed just like..." Buddy finishes the sentence for him. "Just like these," he says, before acknowledging County Coroner Chuck Allen on the other end of the line. Allen can only confirm what's already known. Both parties had been stabbed repeatedly and viciously. A hunting knife was no doubt used to do the dirty work. Rex Mason, editor of the weekly Linden Review and Buddy's fishing pal, creates headlines about the whole affair. But nobody outside the village pays much attention. Why should they? They've got their own troubles. Christie tells Buddy that he's taking the tragedy too personally, as if finding who killed 23-year-old Sarah Schroeder and her 25-year-old fiancé Jason Blackwell is Buddy's sole responsibility. The sheriff goes into Raleigh to meet with both sets of parents. Learns the kids had gotten engaged the Sunday before and planned to be married at Christmas. She was a lab technician, he was a computer programmer. 2 years out of college, they had paid a visit to the young man's elderly aunt at her Linden home. They planned to get in one last night of camping before returning to the city, and it was obvious they were city people. The area where they had chosen to pitch their tent and build a fire was strictly off limits. The summer had been too hot and too dry. Campfires were a definite no-no in these hills right now. Maybe they hadn't noticed the signs. Buddy agonizes over the other murdered couple, the ones in Charlotte, unknown to him until he phones authorities in that city to find out what they know about that earlier but similar crime. And there are similarities, he learns. But was it really the work of one killer? Did the maniac kill twice in Linden and maybe before that twice in Charlotte? Will he kill again? And if so, where will he strike next? Is little Sammy safe? Is Christie safe? The town has total confidence that Buddy will find the killer and bring him to justice. Nothing. Not one lead, one idea, one clue, one witness. So Buddy does what he hasn't thought to do since he was a kid. He begins to use tracking skills taught him by his Cherokee grandfather. No one's more fascinated by this new way of doing things than 8-year-old Sammy, who goes along with his granddad on weekends, back into the woods, to learn at his granddad's side what Buddy had learned at his grandfather's side. There's a backstory to the killer's life. Of course, there's always a backstory. Dylan Maddox, named for Bob Dylan, his mother's favorite singer, is known to friends as Rainbow. He paints them on canvases, t-shirts, cars, motorcycles, anything that'll hold still long enough for the swish of a brush. His mother was a teen rebel who ran away from home at 13, fell in love with a college radical at 14, and gave birth to Dylan at 15, and died of an overdose of something concocted in staggering proportions at 17. She left behind a legacy of music she'd created out of her own pretty blonde head, plus photos of a childlike teen holding a naked baby boy, her old guitar, plus a box of crystals, and 2 sand candles. After his young wife's death, Rainbow's dad went on to fight for the legalization of marijuana. Lost. He was ahead of his time, but not by much. Lived in a house with 5 or 6 other fuzzy-haired radicals. Then, surprise, surprise, cleaned up his act and is, today, a prosperous Arizona landlord. He owns a couple of shopping malls and belongs to the country club. Over a period of 10 years, off and on, Rainbow's made an effort to bond with his estranged father, but his parent was having none of it. Rainbow is given his mother's crystals, the guitar, and her music, and sent on his foggy way. To Rainbow's credit, he mends broken animals and sings to little hill country children. He also shoots dope into his veins and up his nose. He connects with the universe when he's high, or so he thinks. He cares desperately about the ozone and Africa's dying elephant population. He's aware that too many youngsters in the world are starving and that some of them are Pisces like himself. He meditates and prays for them as he fondles a protective crystal and intones his personal mantra. After murdering the engaged couple, Rainbow found himself coming out of a cocaine stupor. He ran to his old friend Rupert, who owns a shanty near the top of a hill. He and his woman, Wynette, raise goats and kids of the human variety in equal number. Their roadside stand, down along the highway, offers for sale homemade dream catchers, wind chimes, and they craft from stones found in a nearby creek and which Rupert hones into interesting shapes and sizes. Tourists sometimes buy the stuff and sometimes don't. And mostly they don't. The crystals range from tiny droplets to a 300-pound whopper they swear has on its surface features of the Madonna, Jesus' mother, not the singer. $1,200 is scribbled on its side in black marking pen. It's been there for 3 years. Rupert listens to his friend's terrible tale and is in full sympathy, as is Wynette, who has become Rainbow's surrogate mother, fiercely loyal and protective of Rainbow and their way of life. They understand what triggered Rainbow's rage. He had lost everything in the fire that ravaged over 50,000 square miles of Carolina mountains 2 years before. He lost all his meager belongings and even his best pal, the scrawniest coon dog in all the region. He also lost the cherished mementos that had been his mother's. Hound was the dog's name. He insisted on following Rainbow as he set out with his paints for a distant river. Rainbow had been meaning to capture on canvas the sun setting through the trees, and this afternoon, he decided, was the day to do it. Hound wasn't so good around easels and paint boxes. He tended to get overly excited when he sighted wildlife. He ruined many a potential masterpiece that way. So, Rainbow did what he almost never did. He chained Hound to the clothesline. And when the fire came racing over the hill, galloping like a runaway stallion toward the house, Hound had nowhere to run except to the end of the 10-foot chain. And that's where they found his charred remains, and Rainbow never forgave himself. But so much for Rainbow's backstory. Let me tell you how it is that Rupert and Wynette understand Rainbow so well. The few people who live around the couple are drawn together out of common interests. In the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, they would have been called hippies. In this modern time of ours, they are called environmental wackos. Their friends belong to mostly nonviolent militia groups. They all, to the last man and to the last woman, hate everything that smacks of government or authority. It's their common bond, and they will defend to the death one another from these forces. The hours spent studying obscure footprints under falling leaves and atop hardening soil turns from days to weeks. Buddy is obsessed with finding the killer. Christy and Sammy see less and less of him as the trail leads him closer and closer to Rupert, Wynette, their 300-pound crystal, and Rainbow. Linden Review editor Rex Mason had practically forgotten his friend was a quarter Indian. Buddy's granddad had been gone for years now and hadn't mingled much with townspeople when he was alive. Mason decides to do a feature story on the sheriff's tracking techniques and Buddy's resolve to find the killer. He starts the human interest story with what most townspeople already knew, that Buddy and Christy's daughter and her husband had owned a family tavern in a nearby town and that both were shot and killed in a robbery gone bad. Sammy was barely a year old. The murderer was caught almost immediately, but that tragedy has a lot to do with why Buddy won't give up his post as sheriff. He wants to make sure that every bad guy is behind bars, and he wants to make damn sure that he's the one who puts them there. What Mason left out of his story is Christy's bitterness towards her husband. She never found it in her heart to forgive him for helping their daughter and son-in-law purchase the tavern. She never wanted them to be that far away, and certainly not to own a bar. If Buddy hadn't made it possible financially, they would not be dead. No, she would never forgive her husband. She was convinced that she was too old to leave, though she actually had left him emotionally the day they buried their girl. Maybe Christie's attitude, her anger, is what kept Buddy at his post as sheriff. It has become his life, all he really had anymore. So long as the townspeople will have him, Buddy will be on the job. There was some comfort in that. It's Wynette who spots the news story in the London Review first. Rainbow panics, but Rupert calms him with a whiff of something, well, from the garden. Their 19-year-old cousin, Julie, has fallen hard for Rainbow. And now, with the story about Sheriff Rowland's single-minded pursuit, she's afraid for him. She shares her fears with those around her, and soon the refrain is carried from hill to hill, how he is, quote, being tracked like an animal. Strumming her cheap little guitar, Julie composes a song called He's a Man. The message is passionately repeated, rippled along the North Carolina hills with a sense of urgency and anger. He's a man of flesh and blood and tender mercies, a man hunted like some wild thing. O God, is there no dignity? Does no one care for those who suffered so at the hands of life?
When did he stop being a man? What do you see when he stands in?
The song doesn't identify Rainbow by name. The wall of protection around him is dense and growing more so. Other songs are written, and soon it seems the Carolina backwoods are filled with a musical plea.
When did he stop being a man?
Understand the man, they beg. He's God's child. Who are you to stand in judgment? He needs your love, not your condemnation.
When did he stop being a man? What do you see when he stands in front of you? Hunted now, there's nowhere to flee. If you find him, what will you do? No matter what you say, no matter what you do, I'll scream it out all day that he's a man like you.
By this time, 2 of the songs have been heard, stolen, and recorded by major entertainers. The music even lands on the charts. Rainbow, still the unnamed underdog, is fast becoming a hero. The people of Linden are outraged that a killer is being romanticized, but no one is more outraged than Buddy. The sheriff and his family have become a target. Sammy is badly beaten at school by the son of a family of rural environmentalists. Several anti-government segments across the nation feel the sheriff has gone too far in trying to capture a man who needs forgiveness. Sure, they say, the mysterious stranger made a terrible mistake, but that's no reason to treat him like something less than human. Find out the whole story before you draw your weapon, they shout. How do you know he wasn't peacefully walking in the woods and was confronted by the man he had to shoot in self-defense? Just because you're the sheriff doesn't mean you can play God. Christy is purposely driven off the road on her way to her volunteer job at the hospital. A warning is hurled from the attacker as he streaks past in a heavy-duty pickup. Christy barely escapes with her life, and her resentment of Buddy grows. Protesters can be heard in the woods across the road from the Rowland cabin, but no one has the courage to go in and confront them. No one but Buddy, and he has enough sense to leave them alone so long as they are peaceful. Their voices can be heard in the middle of the night, resonating across the hills. Worse yet, TV news anchor men and women, reporters from news magazine shows, writers from all over the world, book publishers, they swarm into Linden. They make camp in front of the sheriff's station and around his home. They dog him, shouting questions, offering enormous sums of money if he'll give a sleazy interview. They demand to know what he's learned thus far about the elusive anti-hero. Environmentalists are even harder hit. Internet movies are in development. Indie wannabe filmmakers are all over Linden. No matter that they don't know Rainbow's identity, it only adds to the mystique. The elusiveness is a plus, not a minus. Parents of the dead girl, Sarah, are hounded unmercifully. Is it true, they ask, that Sarah was part of a woman's rights movement favoring abortion? The inference being that if that's the case, maybe she deserved to die. Maybe it's karma at work, they infer. It all really hits the fan when it's learned that she actually had an abortion when she was raped 4 years back. When a quick-to-the-press book about the mystery of the unidentified killer, now the subject of top-selling music videos, hits the marketplace, it shoots straight to #1, prompting requests from every talk show in the country. Requests to Buddy, Christy, Sarah, and the murdered man's friends and relatives, even the Back Hills people. It's relentless. And to make matters worse, if that's possible, serious-minded social analysts are given an enormous amount of airtime delving into the why of the public thirst for more information about a hunted mystery man. Winter slams into the mountain town. Spring flourishes, and finally, all the tracking, the obsession, the relentless, sleepless days and weeks and months smash to a halt for Buddy. He faces Rainbow, 1-on-1. Of course, Buddy could just kill him. God, it would be easy, so easy. It had all become so personal. Buddy knows this subhuman creature. Footprints like portraits speak of the individual. There are, of course, the songs, the social media, the news stories, and the television movies to make Buddy feel as if they had met before, eye to eye, and shared a blinking of Earth time together. Rainbow is caught off guard the day it happens, caught trapping dinner from the stream out behind a shack owned by two buddies. He's scrutinizing a string of fish when the sheriff simply walks up behind him. Time grinds to a stop as recognition spreads across their faces. It takes enormous will for Buddy not to squeeze the trigger of the police pistol in his hand. Every nerve screams to blast the ragged youth in front of him to kingdom come. There are those who might say, had anyone been there to witness the scene, the young man would have welcomed it. Fatigue is etched deeply into his face that has only been on the planet less than 30 years. Buddy knows that death is not the answer for either of them. Sarah's parents deserve to see for themselves this slice of slime in worn jeans and a tattered shirt. Jason's parents need to know that justice is working for them. And Buddy needs to come down from 7 months of pent-up rage. Come down slowly, not with a sudden bang. The way the story is told in the press, on the night of the killings, Rainbow had gone into the woods to spend a peaceful evening communing with nature. Yes, he indulged in a little cocaine. He wasn't hurting anyone but himself, and that's his business, no one else's. When he happened upon the campfire in an area where it was plainly posted that no fires were allowed, he flashed on the Holocaust that had wiped out everything he loved, and he went berserk. The media can't get enough of Rainbow. Everybody has a new slant. A heart-rendering story about Hound, Rainbow's love for animals, the loss of his mother at a tender age, his estranged establishment father. Social media and the networks reason that if you think about it, Rainbow was actually enforcing the law when he attacked the couple who camped in a no-fire zone. In fact, Rainbow just may have saved Linden. TV appearance offers are made even though he's being held for murder and isn't available. No matter, TV producers and podcast hosts say, he'll get off. No problem. Hung jury guaranteed. Case dismissed. Fan clubs blossom. Social media goes insane with followers and supporters. Mail sacks by the dozens are delivered to the jail where Rainbow is being held until his hearing. They contain hundreds of marriage proposals and letters from high-powered lawyers offering to take the case. Ah, the sweet scent of movie and book deals. After all, the real, the unforgivable villain, according to the press and the public, is the old sheriff, Buddy Rowland. The town, however, takes a sudden stand. Buddy has been their sheriff, their friend, their protector for decades, as was his father before him. Lyndon is firmly behind him as he puts together an airtight case he's determined will be tried justly, with a just result. Meanwhile, Rainbow is held without bail. By now, a well-known $4,000 a suit lawyer has taken the case. Cameras follow him everywhere he goes, and he basks in the attention. Before you know it, his face is on every TV channel and on every social media outlet in the country. He's as famous as his client. Julie had remained close to Rainbow throughout the entire ordeal, ran with him, hid with him, loved him. Sometimes there was no place to stay but inside a cave where firelight and the sound of her sweet voice singing songs that Rainbow had written just for her were the only food and drink. Now, with Rainbow in jail, Julie sings one of those songs on a national TV morning show.
Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you feel me today? Will you talk with me, dance with me? I'll protect you from the fray. I'll lead you all the way. I felt your love this day. It can't just slip away. No, I can't go back to where I used to be. Now that I've seen you, heard you, felt you today, I want to go with you, dance with you, follow you all the way. I felt your love this day.
It gets immediate play on radio stations everywhere. The morning show clip is seen by millions on YouTube. Some say the song will even be nominated for a Grammy. Suddenly, shy, sad-faced Julie is a star of gigantic proportions. And now, irony of ironies, before the meaning of it all can be intelligently analyzed, Rainbow and Julie are out of favor with their own people. It was all right when the fringe group's concerns were getting out to the world through song, but now some of them are being investigated by the IRS, and the attention is turning their lives into the very thing they so despise. Some of their friends and relatives have even accepted money, and with that money, they've bought themselves new cars and fancy houses. It's corrupted them, eroded their allegiance to all they had ever held sacred. In his cell, it's plain to see that Rainbow really is, as the song insisted, only a man. A frightened man at that. His instant fame had sent him on a high such as he'd never known before, and now the downside is as horrific as drug withdrawal. Everyone seems to suddenly be against him. Members of the press say he's one thing, his enemies say he's something else, and he doesn't know anymore. He just doesn't know who he is. Seeing his depression, Buddy comments to his wife, "I pray to God he doesn't kill himself. He won't just be a hero anymore. He'll be a damn martyr." There's criticism of the special treatment afforded Rainbow as he waits to be transported to the county seat for his hearing. Little does the public know that Buddy is compelled to handle Rainbow with kid gloves to keep constant vigil over him because of the threat of suicide. A threat implied, not stated. And there's something else, too. The sheriff begins to see Rainbow not as a caricature depicted in the press, but as a person. Buddy goes from seething and rage to curiosity, to something entirely different, and then, at some level, the men begrudgingly, unwillingly connect. But yet it happens. Rainbow's found dead in his cell. It's possible, if one is determined enough, and Rainbow had had all he could take. He knew, too, the chances of getting out were becoming more and more remote. With his best friends turning on him, the disappointment, the loss, was unbearable. Rainbow was never an evil man. He hadn't killed the Charlotte couple, but he had murdered the couple outside Linden. Yet, he was no Charlie Manson. He was a tortured, lonely soul who never had, and never would, fit comfortably in his own skin. It might even make sense to repeat the words from a song of the 70s. This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. For no matter how one felt about him, Rainbow's music was sweet and haunting and reflected a being too fragile, too twisted to be able to survive, let alone thrive on planet Earth. Most people understood that they who had created this mythical hero had also destroyed him. They probably could not have verbalized it, but deep inside they knew, and it was okay, because they were through with him. Ratings were achieved, book sales enjoyed, millions of thumbs pointing upward on the computer screen assured friends among the misfits. Ah, yes, fat cats lick their furry paws after the kill. The summer storm outside was nothing compared to the storm of anguish that prevailed among the media and the public when Rainbow's death was reported. But human beings are unpredictable, and because of that, in the end, only a handful of the most insensitive still felt that Buddy was responsible. The rest simply didn't care anymore. On the morning of Rainbow's funeral, national headlines screamed, "Sports figure arrested on moral charge." So the insatiable feeding frenzy turns in its tracks and speeds off in that direction. Like a swarm of locusts, the media, with the public following at a frantic pace blindly behind, again attack that which is the easiest to spot, the most prominent, the most conspicuous, the largest hero in sight, for the single purpose of devouring it. Rainbow, on his burial day, is almost as forgotten as he had been in life, at least the largest part of his life. Buddy and Christy leave the cemetery with a handful of others, including one or two photographers who take a quick shot of the pathetic event and hurry away so as not to miss one moment of assault on the sports figure, their next intended victim. Sammy runs on ahead of his grandparents. The week-long storm has dwindled to a fine mist. Buddy and Christy follow along behind. They can't help but notice a rainbow arching high above the trees. Christy reaches for her husband's hand as they continue along the country road toward home.
This has been a Mojave Beach production presented by Saratoga Playhouse. Mojave Beach player Jeff Evans was your storyteller. Esther Luttrell wrote and directed. Erudessa Gentain composed and performed He's a Man and Feel the Love. Eddie Craig played the harmonica. Sound effects were provided by Zapsplat, Wesleyan Studios, and Sound Bible. Our score was the genius of Jason Shaw of Audionautics, who composed Green Leaves, Into Five, Acoustic Guitar, Country Cue, and Bridges Guitar. Music from Pixabay brought you Lazy Desert Incidental Music 4 and the incredibly haunting Mio Balbino Cara, composed and performed by Ashcombe. Our friends at Wesleyan Studios provided the beautiful Stasis by Steve Oxen, who also wrote Champagne at Sunset. David Wesleyan composed and performed our Saratoga Playhouse theme, Tears of Joy. This is Patrick McGranahan, your producer and technical supervisor, sharing music editing credits with Esther.